Welcome to SuperTalk, the podcast that scratches your superhero itch. Just two suburban dads nerding out over superhero stuff on the small screen and the big. Buckle up, people. Enjoy the ride. Hello, YouTube. Awesome. All right, episode 80. Professor, like a gentleman, are you ready?
Yes, sir.
You always are. I don't even know why I ask you anymore. But I appreciate the feedback. in 3.
Welcome to SuperTalk, the weekly podcast dedicated to news and reviews of comic book media on the big and small screen. This is episode number 80. I'm your host, Brian Professor Pedersen. With me, as always, is my illustrious co-host, Titanium Tony Estrella, the fisherman. Titania.
Yes, sir.
You're back.
Yeah.
You had a big tournament yesterday.
Big fishing bass tournament. Tough day.
Yeah, you were crack of dawn on the water. Lines in the water at what, 6:30 a.m.?
6:15.
Oh my!
Fishing by 6:15. Fish till weigh-ins was at 3. Tough day. We put 4 sizable weighable fish in the boat. Limit was 5. We caught all of them the last hour. Just didn't have time to catch some more quality.
But you rallied at the end, right? It was a slow morning, frantic. But you rallied at the end.
I mean, I can't even tell you the condition of some of my rods that were on the deck during putting those fish in the boat. I think at one point, one of my reels came off, and it was a shit show. And then to get back to weigh-ins, we were doing 60 miles an hour on the water and chop. Oh my God.
And be back by 3.
I was white-knuckled, gripping onto everything I could, just trying to hold on, getting in, but we made it. We made it by 1 minute. We had 1 minute to spare to check in. And it was fun. Great experience. Thank you, Mark Angeles, for having me. Back of the boat is a different beast, but it was fun.
Well, that's a great way to spend your weekend. And another great way to spend your weekend is doing a podcast about comic book media, which we're going to do right now. But first, we want to thank the listeners that bring the show to you. Those are our patrons. Patreon.com is how you become a patron of the show. If you want to donate $1 an episode, help us out. Really helps us bring this content to you. You appreciate what we do. You want to give back to the show. Just become a patron. Patreon.com/SuperTalk is how you do that. Please join. Look, no reviews this week. Primarily because you and I really had no real big desire to go out and see the new movie that was in the theaters.
DC Comics. It's an animated movie.
DC Super Pets. DC League of Super Pets came out in theaters this weekend.
Some pretty big names voicing some of those.
The Rock and Kevin Hart are the two big names attached to this project. If you recall, this movie was delayed. I believe it's supposed to come out in March or April, and it was pushed back all the way to the end of July by DC. So that was part of their big shift of movies, and you and I at the time were like, why are they moving an animated feature 4 months? Like, what is going on? And I think it was just the kind of overall shift that they had for all their movie slate. It did lead the box office this weekend, not surprisingly. It was a new movie, so it did lead the box office.
And the only movie to launch this weekend.
The only movie of any substance this weekend that launched. And Rotten Tomatoes had some pretty good reviews. I mean, 89% fresh score from the audience, which is a pretty good score. I think it was 72% from critics and 89%.
I will see this movie, whether it's in the theater. I don't know, probably, but I will see this movie. Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll see it eventually.
Yeah.
The concept of the movie is every superhero in the Justice League, Superman, Batman, the Flash, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, have their own pets, whether they're dogs or cats or lizards or whatever they may be, and all of these pets are part of their own league of super pets, right? And they have their own kind of and they have to save their owners, and so we don't know exactly what happens. I really haven't looked into it too much, but we should see this.
Yeah, we will.
it'll be something to watch. Literally, it'll probably be like a Wednesday night where I have nothing else going on. Like, let's go see League of Super Pets, whatever. But hey,
I saw Nope instead Thursday.
You saw what?
Nope.
How was Nope?
It was good. It was different. It was weird as shit. It's a sci-fi movie. It's probably the least of my favorites of his 3 movies.
Not of Planet Earth, right? That's what Nope stands for?
No, Nope stands for what black people say when there's a
I know
scary
that's
situation.
what... I know
but that's what he said. That's what the director said. What's his name? Key and Peele? What's the guy's name? Did I butcher it?
Nailed it.
No. Not even close.
You nailed it. But I thought Nope was an acronym for Not of Planet Earth because it's about aliens coming to the Earth.
Okay, that might be it, but I heard that he said it was just because that's
Nope.
what they say. Yeah, nope.
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 Hey, you want to go back and sit in the back of the barn behind the chainsaws?
Nope.
Nope.
Hey, there's noises coming from that graveyard. You want to head in there and discover what it is? Nope.
All right. Well, let's again.
Good movie.
We'll review.
We'll see it.
We'll see DC League of Super Pets at some point in time, and we'll give you our thoughts about it. Again, not something that we were really compelled to see, but
because we're not 5 and we're not 10 years old.
Well, look. Are you looking forward to I Am Groot? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So it really didn't tug at the heartstrings or whatever it might be. We'll see it eventually, but. Let's jump into the news section. We got a ton of things to talk about, and a lot of this is really post-Comic-Con feedback, analysis, and interviews that happened after Comic-Con, and a lot of the stuff that came out this week was really in regards to all the announcements that came out at Comic-Con last week, and some of the kind of, we'll say, the backlash of all of that. So we'll go through a bunch of this.
People are still kind of reeling from that. It was an information dump that put people in a headspin. At least I'm still dizzy from it. It was incredible.
If nothing else, Titanium, I think, and I'm glad, it had been a couple of years since we really had any Comic-Con presence. And I think the studios, both Marvel and DC, and all the, the Star Wars people were there. We got some John Wick stuff. There's all kinds of stuff at Comic-Con this past week. I think it validated not only the audience that attends the show, but the people that pay attention to it. And I hope that going forward, both Marvel and DC, from a comic book media perspective, put some investment into this going forward, because we did get some good, valuable information out of it. And the response was off the charts.
Yeah.
We were dying for this information.
Yeah.
We said, we need, there's too many rumors floating around. Just come out and tell us what's going on.
Yeah,
so we got some of that.
Definitely we did.
We got a ton of reports this week. I'll start off by saying something that you brought to my attention, that The Sun has reported that Harry Styles has signed a multi-picture deal to return as Eros, Star Fox, in up to 5 MCU movies moving forward. That's to crazy. 5. So not necessarily 5, but
Correct.
up to 5.
Correct.
Kevin Feige was asked in an interview after Comic-Con, are we going to see Harry Styles in the MCU anytime soon? Are we going to see this character? And he really was kind of vague about when and where we would see him, but he said, look, we've got street-level heroes like Daredevil and Spider-Man. We've got supernatural heroes like Ghost Rider and Blade and Doctor Strange. And then we've got cosmic stories and heroes like Guardians of the Galaxy and other things. And that's where we're going to see Eros and Pip the Troll come back. So he did say that we would see the character, but to get an announcement from an official newspaper, which is, obviously something that's a little bit more valid, that Harry Styles has signed a multi-picture deal with MCUs, they've got some plans for this character going forward.
Absolutely.
And you and I talked about this last week. What's going on with the Eternals? Are we going to see them again? Are they going to be in another project? And this tells me that not only are we going to see the Eternals, we're going to see this character in something going forward. So what they're doing around the cosmic, we'll say, projects they have going on, this character is going to fit into that pretty nicely.
I agree. Yeah.
He's too big of a star.
He is. You don't nail him down just for a cameo or end credit scene. I think they're going to use him a lot more. I wouldn't be surprised if we see him in Guardians 3.
James Gunn has officially come out publicly and said he is not in the movie.
Excellent.
He was asked point blank, straightforward, are we going to see Star Fox in Guardians 3, and he said absolutely not. We've got way too much else going on in the movie. That doesn't mean we won't see him in an end credit scene, though.
Of course not. And I think that's probably the most we're going to see of him. But if you think about it, really, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, maybe, but that's not really cosmic based.
Well, but of all the projects we had announced by Marvel last week, and by the way, they left a ton out, which we'll talk about here in some other items. There are places where we could see this character in the future, especially things like Secret Wars and Kang War and things like that.
The Avengers joint, we're going to see a shitload of characters in those.
I just have a feeling that they're not going to put the Eternals and Star Fox on the shelf for 3 years. I mean, something's going to happen somewhere that we're going to see them. So we'll see. But good news for Harry Styles. I mean, again, when we saw him in the post-credit scene, we're like, this guy's a superstar. He's too well known and too well liked. It's perfect casting. Hey, you're going to use him, and the signing just tells us that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And when you have that fan base that you're going after, that you brought in a whole group of different age and different gender of fans behind Harry Styles and all of his fan base, you bring those on the MCU family. You can't just shelf that for a long period of time.
So one of the things that was, we'll move on to the next side, one of the things that was left out of any announcements last week that you and I discussed, any mention of mutants, the X-Men, any mutant project specifically, no mention of those at all. And my thought last week was, this is something they're definitely holding on to for D23. It's way too big. It's something that they've been planning. It's something they have plans for. We just don't know those plans, and they're waiting to tell us in September at D23. And then there's a new story that came out this week. Inside the Magic reported that the X-Men will not show up in the MCU until 2025, primarily because of contractual agreements that Fox has with the existing slate of actors that were cast in the X-Men movies at Fox that prevents them from recasting those characters until 2025. It makes a ton of sense. Number one of the reasons why they could bring Patrick Stewart back into the MCU.
Hey, Professor, what about Professor X?
Well, they brought him back in the MCU in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness to portray Professor X because he had been cast by Fox in that role previously, and therefore they were living up to that contractual agreement that Fox had with Patrick Stewart. And we'll talk about the next story here in a second, but what this tells me is, number one, if there is truth to this, I'm surprised we haven't heard it. When you hear these things from third-party sources, you kind of, again, if it doesn't come from Marvel, directly from Disney, take it with a grain of salt. Is there any truth to this? Maybe. And if we do hear announcements at D23 about their plans for mutants and the X-Men and recasting of these characters, and it doesn't happen until 25, we kind of have a feeling of why that is. Yeah. And it's this contractual agreement they have. At the same time, I kind of have a hard time believing this, that they would have purchased the rights to these characters with this contractual obligation, knowing they were going to take, upwards of 4.5 years from when they made that acquisition before they could use those characters again, or any new actors. I'm surprised we haven't heard this earlier. That being said, it doesn't mean there's no truth to this. I think D23 will give us a lot of clarity around this. That being said, I want to kind of transition into the next story, which is when they released the Phase 5 calendar, and they gave us all of those projects that you and I went through last week, all the way from Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, which is the first film in Phase 5, all the way through Thunderbolts at the end of, or kind of middle of July of 2024. That's Phase 5, right? They gave us all those projects and everything. The Disney
end of Phase 4 is Wakanda Forever.
Right. And the beginning of Phase 5 is Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, which they're calling the Multiverse Saga. So that starts with Quantumania, going all the way through. Phase 4 is going to go all the way through the Thunderbolts movie, which they announced in July of 2024. There was one specific date, and you and I went through this probably 7 or 8 episodes ago, when Marvel had released the release dates of upcoming movie projects to the media without any names of those projects or any, we didn't know what movies were going to be attached to those dates. They gave us release dates for the next 3 years. And one of those dates was February 16th, 2024. That date was a glaring omission from their Phase 5 release schedule. So we got all these projects, and we had, Captain America, and then we had, I can't remember the movie that we had, Daredevil, Born Again, and then we had another movie, and then we had Thunderbolts. But February 16th, 2024 was left off of that schedule.
Right.
And there was a movie that comes out in, I believe, November of 2023, and then we had like the Thunderbolts in July 2024, and we're like, or we had a May movie. I can't remember what the May movie was, and there was a July movie. But there was no February 24th movie, and we're like, it's February 16th, 2024 movie. We're like, what could that movie be? Why wasn't that date announced? Everybody and their mother and everybody and their brother is thinking about what is going to happen with that date, and the conjecture is this is when Deadpool 3 is going to be released into the MCU, and they're saving that announcement for D23. The first mutant movie, the first mutant character to show up in the MCU is going to be Deadpool, and here's the reason why. Speaking of the contractual obligations, guess what? Ryan Reynolds is the actor that played Deadpool in the Fox characters, and they don't have in the Fox universe, and they don't have to worry about the contractual obligations because he's already under contract.
Right.
So what was you have the dates in front of you? What was
February 14th, 2025?
No.
Oh, you're talking about 2024?
Yes, in 2024. So we had Captain America: New World Order is May 3rd, 2024. Thunderbolts is July 26, 2024. There is a February 16th, 2024 date that's not on the schedule. Mm-hmm. And so we're like, what's going to happen in that date?
Well, that would make sense for Deadpool, and Deadpool only. So Deadpool 3 could go in 2024. I agree with that.
Because Ryan Reynolds.
Because Ryan Reynolds. It's the same character. But I just think that the Deadpool thing was a separate contract. It had really nothing to do with mutants. But you're right.
It's part of the Fox universe.
It absolutely is. But I think you're right. That could go 2023, 2024. But that date is absolutely open for that, and I think they would probably do themselves a favor by landing it. Now, Kang Dynasty, Secret Wars, that's all 2025.
Right.
We absolutely could see X-Men in those two movies.
And again, they had a number of unreleased projects earlier in 2025 that they had some months and some dates there that they didn't attach project. They had the Fantastic Four, and then they had Kang Dynasty, and then Secret Wars.
Fantastic Four, November 8th, 2024.
Right. So after November 2024, between that point and Kang Dynasty coming out in 2025, there were a number of unreleased projects in dates that they had put on the schedule. They didn't give us anything. Absolutely, an X-Men movie is going to show up. And again, that would, if 2025 is when we're going to first see those characters in the MCU, and it's before Secret Wars, it has to happen.
It has to happen.
Has to happen then. But I do believe they're going to make an announcement at D23 about Deadpool 3 coming in February of 2024, and I think that is going to be a big announcement they're making.
Two big things I want to see in D23. One is the announcement of Deadpool 3. I think I'd love to hear and nail that down so mentally I can relax on that. And number two, some kind of casting announcements for Fantastic Four.
Oh, you have to have that. You have to. And I think they were saving that too.
I hope so.
That's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I hope so.
There were a number.
And we know that the Fantastic Four is not going to be an origin story. It is going to be very similar to Spider-Man, the way that Marvel handled Spider-Man. And they're going to eliminate the origin story and just move them as a team as they are.
Like we should know who they are, and we should.
And everybody should. Right? Yeah, I mean, we've done
one of the most popular teams in Marvel Comics history. There have been movies out before. There have been animated series out before. We don't need to know who they are and how they get their powers.
Like
and all
Spider-Man,
that stuff.
we didn't need it.
Or do it as a 5-minute flashback.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I don't think you need it.
Whatever. I mean, it's no big deal. We have to have that. And there were a number of projects they did announce that we feel we're going to get announcements for in D23. Things like the Nova project, things like the Wonder Man project, things like what were the other movies that we know that are coming out? Shang-Chi 2.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just certain projects that we know they have on the schedule.
They've admitted to us. I mean,
Kevin Feige came out and said, we couldn't give you everything today. We'd love to give it all to you. We just couldn't do it all. We didn't have enough time. We've got way more to announce to you. They're going to come out with a ton of stuff. And I think D23 is going to be off the charts. As much as we were happy with what we got at Comic-Con, I think D23 is going to be off the charts good.
I agree.
So, yeah, anyway, that was great. I think that Deadpool will be announced for February 2024, which will be awesome. We got another report. And I don't know if you saw this today, Titanium, but Small Screen and Movie Web report Jon Bernthal is going to return as the Punisher in his own series on Disney Plus, and they're going to announce this at D23, and that series is going to be rated TVMA, which is TV Mature Audiences.
Wow.
So this was a big announcement, came out today. We had surmised this many months ago. There was talk about Jon Bernthal returning as the Punisher.
He had been in talks with Marvel, yep.
Right, he had been in talks with Marvel about returning, and he came out publicly and said, I would love to play this character again, but it all comes down to the script and the story and how this character is going to fit into the MCU. And we kind of had a feeling this was going to happen at some point in time. The story that came out today was that he has already signed a contract with Marvel. He has signed a deal. He will be appearing in a Disney Plus series that will be announced at D23, starring the Punisher. And you and I talked about this months ago, Titanium. I wholeheartedly believe that the future of this character in the MCU is centered around the supernatural kind of Midnight Suns teams that they're putting together with Ghost Rider and the Black Knight and Blade and Werewolf by Night and Moon Knight, hunting supernatural threats. I mean, look, the Punisher is an incredibly violent, incredibly, controversial character in the MCU, but if you're hunting zombies and undead characters, you can unleash as many bullets out of an automatic weapon as you want to kill those things, and it really
PC as hell. I agree. I agree with you. I think that's an absolute way to show how of a absolute killer he is without kind of in today's society being showing bad guys doing bad stuff. I think it's a great way to do that. Midnight Suns is a perfect vehicle for him to flourish.
What if that Punisher series on Disney Plus had Moon Knight in it, or some other character where they're hunting supernatural threats? I mean, God, can you imagine, dude?
That would the Midnight
or Ghost Rider?
The Midnight Suns is my fantasy superhero team. You know what I'm saying? If you had to pick a team, like fantasy football, but in fantasy football, fantasy superheroes, the Midnight Suns is what I would pick.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
But look, I love Jon Bernthal all the way back when he was in Walking Dead. He's a fantastic actor. His portrayal of the Punisher character, not only in the Daredevil series, but also in his own series, the 2 seasons he had on Netflix, was so good. As a kid who collected and purchased the Punisher comic books as a child and fell in love with this character in the comic books, to see him on the big screen was a big deal, or we'll say the small screen. To see him in movies or a Disney Plus series, and Jon Bernthal did it so well. I can't wait, and I swear to God, if they announce this at D23, it'll break the internet, just like Henry Cavill was supposed to do at Comic-Con. It will be a huge, massive announcement, and to bring him out on stage will be a big deal. I'm just telling you. And they've talked about D23 is going to be...
what's the date at D23?
I think it's September 9th, 10th, and 11th,
okay.
I believe, are the 3 days. And I think we get Disney Plus Day is September 8th. So we're getting a Disney Plus stuff before D23, and then 9th, 10th, 11th. And D23 is not just Marvel. As you can imagine, it's everything Disney. It's talking about the parks. It's talking about Star Wars. It's talking about the cruise ships. It's talking about everything. Pixar, yeah. So we're going to get a lot of announcements over those days. But this announcement, they said that D23 is really being scheduled around the availability of the actors that were going to be on stage during these announcements. And I think bringing John Bernthal out on stage in his Punisher costume, it's gonna be crazy. Yeah, I'm really excited for that. Just so huge news today. I'm excited about that. We did get some DC news, and I don't know where this is going, so you can kind of explain this to me, Titanium. So Jason Momoa came out on social media and confirmed that Ben Affleck will be reprising his role as Batman in Aquaman, The Lost Kingdom. So what's going on here,
I think it's going to be a small cameo. I don't think he's going to play into the storyline. I think it's going to either be an after-credit scene or a small cameo. I think they're going to keep it canon. They're going to keep it consistent of what they've done with Justice League and all those movies until they get their shit together. I'm really hoping for some big news from DC. I mean, again, they're still shelving Superman. How do you do that? They're filming Madam Web now. They have.
What's that to do with DC?
I think other films that are ongoing. You don't hear much about Madam Web. You don't hear much about
Madam Web.
Sony, but you don't hear much about these other films. It's all Marvel. I'm hoping that these other entities, these other production companies, these other companies like Sony, Warner Brothers, Discovery Warner Brothers now. Have their shit together, and they're starting to realize the way to do it is the way Marvel is doing it, and make these big announcements.
Well, we have. Okay, look, let's break it down. Outside of Marvel, here's what we know from DC. We've got Black Adam coming out in September. We have Shazam: Fury of the Gods coming out in December,
which looks better than I thought.
Right, and then we have Aquaman coming out in the spring. So those three projects are
all been pushed back. I mean,
but they're on the slate. And again, the Flashpoint movie has been pushed back to the summer, and we've heard and talked about Ezra Miller's potential issues with that project, and we have no idea what's going on there. This news is big for a couple of reasons. One, we thought Ben Affleck was done in the DCEU. We thought he was finished after the Snyder Cut for the most part. We knew he was going to reprise his role at least one more time for the Flashpoint movie in a very small role.
Yeah,
but that was going to be it.
Yeah.
But to hear that he's now coming back in Aquaman means not only is he reprising his role another time, but he's doing it before the Flash movie comes out. So we're going to see Ben Affleck as Batman one more time in the DCU before the last time we were supposed to see him, which is the Flash movie. Does this mean that he might be the future Batman of the DCEU?
Nothing would make me happier. I like Ben Affleck as Batman. I thought he did a great job. I like nothing against Mr. Patterson. I think he did a phenomenal job. Great movie. I love that movie. Matt Reeves. That was unbelievable. Cinematography off the charts. But I like Ben Affleck as Batman. I thought he did a great job, and he played the role very, very well. I don't know. Was this an announcement because the rumor was that Ezra Miller was supposed to have a cameo in this movie as the Flash to set his movie up that's next?
Here's the other question. Does Ben Affleck take over some of the screen time that Amber Heard was going to have as Mira in the movie, and they had to replace her screen time with some other compelling character, and therefore it's Ben Affleck now as Batman, and we're not going to see as much, if any, of Mira and Amber Heard because of all the controversy there, and we have to bring somebody else in, and Ben Affleck's like, look, I'll do it because I love Jason Momoa. They're good friends, they got along. And
riddle me this, Professor. Gal Gadot has come out and said that yes, she's going to play Wonder Woman again. And that movie is greenlit. They don't have any script. They don't have any director. What do you do with Gal? I mean, one of the most popular DC characters and a huge first movie is still on the shelf.
You mentioned Superman. It, Titanium.
I mean, it's brutal.
You mentioned it, Titanium. I think the biggest thing missing from the DCEU right now is long-term vision of their strategy and plan.
Do you still think...
I think they're going to have a fandom event again later this year. I do believe they're going to do that around the October-November timeframe like they did last year. And I do think we're going to get some... And I do believe the people at Discovery DC, Discover Warner Brothers, are thinking about that right now.
Yeah.
Because, again, if I look at the long-term vision of what DC has on the slate right now, it ends with Flashpoint, which is summer of next year. There's no vision beyond that.
None.
Again, you mentioned that the third Wonder Woman movie has been greenlit, but we know nothing about it. No plot, no story, no title, nothing, no direct. I mean, well, we assume
Patty
Jenkins is still directing that. We know Gal Gadot's still part of that project, but we know nothing about it.
Yeah.
I think that this fandom event we might get near the end of the year hopefully will give us a long-term vision. And this could be a massive shakeup. And I'm hoping that this announcement that we heard from Jason Momoa means that Ben Affleck may be back in. We know that after Justice League, he was going through some personal problems. He was dealing with some substance abuse issues. But it seems like recently he's gotten his life back together. He just recently got married. Got married last week to J-Lo, so they're married again. So his life's back in order. Maybe he's now thinking, look, I wouldn't mind spending the next 5 years playing a Batman character in the DCEU. We could have Matt Reeves and Robert Pattinson do their kind of like alternate universe version of this, but I'll be happy to do the Justice League version of this, and maybe this means he's back. I don't know. Again, I'm happy for Jason Momoa because he is a fantastic Aquaman, and I want his movie to succeed like nothing else. The director Wong, what's his
Fast and Furious guy?
Yeah. He's I mean, the first Aquaman movie was fantastic. Yeah. I want this movie to succeed. So if this helps, great. We'll see where it goes. I think we need, and again, strategically, DC's got a lot to live up to. And again, they missed the boat on Comic-Con.
Of course they did.
Yeah.
Disheveled. I mean, yes. The Rock and Black Adam had a big showing at Comic-Con, but I don't think it was enough to hold the franchise together. It really wasn't.
They do need, and again, you mentioned this several times, Titanium, that they're looking for a Kevin Feige to lead the future of the DCEU, somebody who's going to be the strategic mind behind the plans of what we're going to do with these characters.
Yeah, and we've talked about this before, Professor.
It's too much.
Is it Kevin Smith? Is it somebody? Is it Jeff? Jeff Johns? Jeff Johns? I don't know. I mean, he hasn't done a bang-up job moving forward. I mean, maybe the suits at Warner Brothers have kind of handcuffed him to certain ideologies that he can't express his creative vision of comic book related issues going through the DCEU, but they really need to get their stuff together because those characters are so rich. They're some of my favorite characters, superhero characters, and to shelve them and not pay attention to them and not get into arguably some of the best villains.
Hey, but look, we've got the Joker musical to look forward to. So
I don't even want to talk about that. That is so disgusting to me. The rumors of that is so vile. I will. It's
Lady Gaga, on stage.
That's going to be as Harley Quinn. Yeah, that's what they're saying. I cannot get behind that. I'm sorry, people.
And again, you see that we've heard the potential rumors of a lot of these superstars that were attached to DCU projects, like Henry Cavill potentially being cast in MCU projects now. I mean, there's rumors that he may be playing Captain Britain in future MCU projects, and you hear Margot Robbie maybe looking at roles inside the MCU. And
wow.
And the reasons for that is because DC doesn't know what the heck they're doing with these characters.
They need to nail that down pretty quickly. So let's move on.
All right. We did see, and this came out like right after Comic-Con. So obviously Comic-Con, Marvel had their Hall H presentation. They never released the entire Hall H presentation to us that weren't in attendance. We get some snips and some clips from whatever they want to show to us, which were fantastic. What they showed to us was great. But there were some scenes that people that attended Hall H got to see that we didn't. And two big, huge ones were Hall H attendees got teaser trailers for both Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 and Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. Now, not surprisingly, these clips that they got to see leaked their way onto the internet, and there's some grainy, footage, kind of somebody holding their phone down by their leg and seeing like half of the screen, and maybe getting most of the audio but not much of the video. But we did get to see a lot of the teaser trailers that they were treated to at Hall H. Wow. Like some of the stuff we got to see in both of these were awesome.
Especially the Ant-Man and the Wasp when he confronts Kang for the first time.
and Scott Lang confronting each other, and he's like, well, I'm an Avenger. He's like, oh, you're an Avenger. Have I killed you before?
Right.
And just like some creepy crap. And we see scenes of his daughter and Hope and him getting dragged into some portal.
It's kind of vortex.
Oh, vortex. It's like craziness. And I can't wait to see that because and we see scenes of him with Hank Pym and Janet Van Dyne kind of sitting in their house and kind of talking about how Scott Lang's become a celebrity, talking about how he saved the universe and all this other stuff.
Scott Lang's daughter, who's now grown, they recast her, a new actress. She's cute as a button. My daughter doesn't like her as an actress, but there's questions. Is she going to be Stinger?
Stature or Stinger.
Stature or Stinger. What do you think?
So in the comic books, she was Stature as part of the Young Avengers. She was kind of like the Goliath or giant man version of the Ant-Man who could grow to enormous heights. But then later on in the comic books, she became Stinger, which is more
like the Wasp,
kind of another version of the Wasp.
Yeah.
It's a great question. We don't know that. Cassie Lang, the character, but. This movie, I think this movie, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, is looking like a mini Avengers movie to me. It's turning out to be because you have Ant-Man, the Wasp, Stature / Stinger, the original Ant-Man, the original Wasp, right? Kang the Conqueror. We've got and then potential cameos that we may have in this movie. This movie looks like it's going to be a big one.
Yeah, absolutely is, and quote unquote, this movie will change the MCU. Moving forward.
Yeah.
So whatever happens in this movie is going to set the tone, obviously, for the multiverse. It kicks off Phase 5.
But if we got this teaser, we'll say, if the attendees of Hall H got this teaser trailer, doesn't that tell you that we're going to get this at D23?
I would say a full trailer, right?
Or the same teaser. Or at D23. I mean, we're less than a month away from this, or about a month away from this now. They've shown this teaser trailer. This is something they cut and they created, and this movie's coming out next spring, right, or late winter, in the March timeframe.
We should get a teaser.
We should get something at D23. I would think so. And the same thing with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. That movie comes out next July or May. I think next May. If we get the attendees of Hall H got to see a teaser trailer of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3.
May 5th, yep.
Yeah, May. Huge scenes between the new version of Gamora and Star-Lord kind of talking with each other. We got to see the High Evolutionary.
She's like head of the Ravengers now.
Exactly.
Gamora,
huge. And we got to see the High Evolutionary with a baby rocket raccoon.
Yeah.
Just so many scenes in there.
Warlock.
We got to see Adam Warlock. We got to see these at D23. I mean, why would you release them in Hall H if they're not ready? I mean, we heard Chris Pratt say on stage it was the first time he had seen that footage kind of put together, and it got him all emotional and everything. But wow, I mean, I'm ready for some. I mean, I think D23 is going to be enormous.
Yeah,
I just have a feeling. So
I'm hoping.
But again, if you haven't seen that on the internet, there are very grainy, bad clips of it out there, and it's really hard to follow, and I just can't wait for them to release it to us because I think we deserve it. But
I need it all put together. I don't need grainy clips.
Exactly. All right, well, that's the news this week. Let's jump into the top of the week this week.
Yes, sir.
We're going to do a little preview of the She-Hulk series, which is coming out on Disney Plus on August 17th.
And the news of the week is brought to you by
our friends over at Studio GG Studios, home of the man band, Corn on the Cob,
Woo!
Best friends of SuperTalk, without question. So,
absolutely,
Studio G, keep supporting us because we'll keep supporting you. So, thank you very much for everything you do for us. But yeah, we're going to do a little preview of the She-Hulk series coming out on Disney Plus. The trailer we got at Comic-Con was, I think, from my perspective, the best trailer we've gotten for this. We got a teaser of this way, like 6 months ago, and you and I were kind of underwhelmed by it. You said the CGI was kind of not really good.
Yeah.
And what we got was just like really didn't give us an idea of the plot. Well, the trailers we've got recently are off the charts good.
Yeah.
Tells us a little bit more about the story, tells us a little bit more about how they're positioning each one of these characters. We got to see so much footage of some of the cameo, well, we'll say some of the cameos we know about and how they're playing roles in the show. We'll kind of talk through that. But I wanted to give the audience a little bit of history of the character of Jennifer Walters, She-Hulk.
From the comics.
In the comic books. And then we'll kind of draw some conclusions on what they're doing for this series and how it relates, or are they making some changes? And it's not uncommon for Marvel to make changes from comic book history. They've done it many times previously. They're going to deviate from the comic book history a little bit when it makes sense or to fit the story. But
as they should. And we'll also address some of the rumors that are online and some of the dislikes about the show online. Professor will give you, I'll ask Professor his opinion. I'll give you my opinion.
All right, well, let's talk about the comic book history of She-Hulk specifically. So She-Hulk originally debuted in the Savage She-Hulk #1, which was 1979, an original comic book. They created this character out of the blue. Hulk had been around for a while, become a very popular character in the comics. And they're like, hey, what if we had a female version of this character? So they created her from scratch. Brilliant marketing by Stan Lee and others at Marvel in creating this character. She had her own comic book series, and they kind of gave her backstory of how she became the She-Hulk. Really interesting story. She is a lawyer, as you guys know. We'll see this in the television series. She's a lawyer. She's Bruce Banner's cousin. She goes to visit her cousin, who she hadn't seen in a while, and he reveals to her that he's the Hulk. And she's like, "Oh my God! What happened to you? How did this happen?" And he tells her the whole story. All unbeknownst to him, she's being hunted by a gangster. So there's an individual she's representing in court.
Because of her lawyerness.
Right. She's a lawyer. She's representing an individual in court who happens to have worked for this gangster, Nicholas Trask, who this gangster she's representing seems to have some evidence against Nicholas Trask, and she publicly announces that she thinks that she has some evidence that the federal government might want to use against Nicholas Trask. Right. So he sends hitmen out to kill her. She's in a car driving with her cousin Bruce. They're attacked by these hitmen representing Nicholas Trask. She's shot, mortally wounded by gunfire. Bruce is, able to fight off the attackers, as you can imagine. He's the Hulk, so he's able to fight off the attackers. But she's dying of a gunshot wound. He takes her, breaks into a local doctor's office, brings her in there, and is trying to save her life. Realizes she's bleeding to death. And the only choice he has is to give her a blood transfusion. That's the only thing that's going to save her life.
Right.
And what do you think is in his blood? Gamma radiation. So the blood transfusion does save her life. Well, she dies, but then because of the blood transfusion and the gamma radiation in his blood, it does eventually save her. But she's able to recover. She gets into a hospital. He brings her to the hospital after he saves her life. She's saved. She's in the hospital. Well, hitmen come to do a second hit against her in the hospital, and she turns into the She-Hulk.
Right.
And she's able to fight everybody off and, take care of problems. And she's like, oh, this is interesting. I'm now able to turn into this, hulking 6'7", strong person. Anytime I have problems going forward, the She-Hulk's going to take care of them. So this was now her kind of alternate persona. She was the lawyer, but she also had this thing that she could turn into that could take care of all the problems that she might have as being this lawyer, right? So she led what we'll call a split life for many years, right? She was a lawyer by day. She would turn into the She-Hulk to kind of go do investigations and take out bad guys and all kinds of other stuff. She was Jennifer Walters, a lawyer during the day, and then she would turn into She-Hulk. She kind of led this kind of dual identity for a long time. She was eventually asked to join the Avengers, which she did. She was asked by the Wasp, Janet Van Dyne, to join the Avengers, and she did. And they became great friends, and she was now a full admitted member to the Avengers, which was like a pretty big deal for somebody, and for the comic book specifically, to have another female, a strong female member.
Yeah.
Oh, it was huge.
Right.
And I think that's one of the reasons why Marvel created this character is because they didn't really have a lot of strong female characters in the comic books, and having a She-Hulk was a big deal. So to bring She-Hulk on the Avengers was huge.
Yep.
She then eventually replaced the Thing on the Fantastic Four. So when she joined
the comics,
she joined the Avengers, and then shortly after she joined the Avengers was the original Secret Wars run in the comic books in the late 80s. She was part of that. She was, participated in the Secret Wars kind of comic book run. That was the first time she fought Titania. What Titania had recently gotten her powers, and the two of them faced off against each other in Secret Wars.
And Titania's in the show,
the television series. Yeah. But that was the first time the two of them had faced off, was in Secret Wars. Well, shortly after Secret Wars, Ben Grimm left the Fantastic Four, and Reed Richards asked Jennifer Walters as She-Hulk to replace the Thing as the fourth member of the Fantastic Four. And she's like, sure, I'll do it. And she was on the Fantastic Four for a long time in the comic books while Ben Grimm was off doing other things. And then at one point in time, the Fantastic Four ventured into the microverse, which...
the quantum realm.
Is the quantum realm that we know in the MCU now. So the microverse was what we refer to in the MCU as the quantum realm. Just kind of history. The microverse word is not intellectual property that's owned by Marvel. It's owned by a toy company, Hasbro. They had a small versions of toys called Micronauts.
Yeah.
And they owned the intellectual property over the word microverse. So when we got in the first Ant-Man movie and the second Ant-Man movie, they talked about the quantum realm. They had to use the word quantum realm because microverse was owned by Hasbro.
Right.
But in the comic books, the Fantastic Four venture into the microverse, which is the quantum realm, and she's subjected to this radiation in the microverse, which prevents her from turning back into Jennifer Walters, the human. So she had been able to switch between Jennifer Walters and She-Hulk, the physical forms of the two, at will. And one of the big differences between her and Bruce Banner and the Hulk was
that fact, that she could switch back and forth.
She could switch back and forth at will, but she also retained her mind.
Right.
So
like Professor Hulk.
Typically when the Hulk raged out and turned into the Hulk, he became this mindless, strong beat monster. The She-Hulk was still the same personality. It was one of the big benefits and advantages that she had. Well, this radiation she was subjected to in the microverse prevented her from returning back to her human form. And therefore, she was going to be the She-Hulk going forward. And frankly, that was good by her, because she was much happier being She-Hulk than she was being Jennifer Walters.
And I think that conflict in the show is going to come through.
Yes, and we'll see that. But she was a member of the Avengers on and off for many years. You look at the Avengers roster over comic book history, she's been on the Avengers many, many, many times. And so she's a staple on that team. And, anytime there's a strong character, her and Hercules have been on the team together at the same time and other things. But she's been on that team for a long, long time. And she was the first one, and just to kind of talk about this, you mentioned this last week, she was the first one to break the fourth wall in the comic books. Yeah. Way before Deadpool did it. So
and that's a lot of controversy right now that I was going to get into with you and ask you, and we have it here. We're going to talk about it right now. is that a lot of fans are saying, "Oh, it's a copy of Deadpool. Deadpool did it first, and they're copying the Deadpool movie." Well, actually, no, right? She broke the fourth wall in the comic books.
Way
used to
before.
rip the pages of the comic books and yell at the writers and the producers and things like that. Within the comic book itself, she would talk to the audience directly. So.
You can see the cover. I've got a cover of the Sensational She-Hulk #1 here, and she's holding the comic book of her original comic book from 1979, the Savage She-Hulk.
We have an armored car out front and guards.
And she's telling you on the cover, she's talking to the audience, if you don't buy my comic book this time, and she did that, so she broke the fourth wall before anybody did. Way before in comic books. And so, yes, there's a lot of controversy about that. Oh, she's doing the same thing that Deadpool does. Well, frankly, She-Hulk did that in the comics way before Deadpool was even a character.
Yeah.
Deadpool, the character, didn't debut in the comic books till the early 90s. He wasn't even created, until Rob Liefeld created him as part of the New Mutants comic book run. So She-Hulk had been around for a long time before that, and she's been doing it for a long time. So for her to do that in her series is kind of like, that's her apropos. So to see it in the trailer didn't surprise me, and I think it's really great. So just wanted to bring that up. That's something she's done in the comics. So let's talk about the Disney Plus series specifically. So who's in it? I find it very, I'll say, ironic that the star of the show is named Tatiana Maslany, and her biggest rival is Titania.
Yeah.
Don't you find that kind of funny?
Yeah, it is funny.
But Tatiana...
Even funnier, she's like 5'2".
Yeah, she's tiny,
Yeah, she's
really
tiny.
small girl. She plays Jennifer Walters, who eventually turns into the She-Hulk. We see Mark Ruffalo as Bruce Banner in the Hulk is going to play a huge role in this series, not only early on, but I think ongoing as her cousin Bruce Banner, but also somebody who's going to kind of mentor her and kind of teach her how to be a superhero and use her powers. We know that Tim Roth is coming back as Emil Blonsky, the Abomination from the Incredible Hulk movie. She represents him in the series at some point in time. We'll talk about that here in a minute. Jamila Jamil plays Titania, again, kind of one of her big rivals in the comic books, somebody who has very similar powers, strong, forceful woman. We see some conflict between them in some of the trailers as well.
Yeah, a lot of controversy on that outfit that she had in the thing, and I think they're going to explain that in the show.
I do think so too.
Yeah.
Ginger Gonzaga plays Nikki Ramos, who is her best friend, Jennifer Walters' best friend, as well as her paralegal. So they're kind of talking with each other a lot in the trailers. We do see Benedict Wong is coming back as Wong.
Let's go.
The character.
You can't go Wong with Wong.
Right. We thought he might have a brief cameo, but the trailers are telling us that he's probably going to be in several episodes of this for some reason, and we'll figure that out. And we know Charlie Cox is coming back as Daredevil. So those are the cameos we know about. From what I understand, there's going to be a different cameo almost every episode in this series.
That'd be awesome.
And I think there's going to be a lot of characters we're not surprised. We're going to be very surprised to see.
The series is based in L.A. I mean, all this happens in L.A. And Charlie Cox, Daredevil, is a New York based character, so that'll be interesting. I'll be interested to see.
Is it possible that she ends up in New York for some reason?
Well, in the comic book, she's based in New York herself, right? Hello?
Yeah.
Are you there?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. Yeah, in the comic book, she's based in New York, so it'll be interesting to see. But in this show, they have her based in LA, so it'll be fun to see.
Yeah, so what do we know from the trailers? So the trailers have shown us scenes of a brief scene of some kind of accident. We see something in the trailers where she's holding Bruce.
She drags him out of the they get into
a car accident.
Yeah, car wreck, and that's when the blood transfer happens.
Right, she's like pulling him out of the car, and she's lying on the ground holding him. His arm's still in the sling, and he's in human form.
He's in human form, and he's hurt without turning into the Hulk.
Right.
So I think he's still in that transition of
between him and Professor Hulk.
I think he's trying to, but he's bloodied up.
We see a scene where like the green, like her veins start turning
his blood all over her. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll see how she. And I don't think it's going to be it's not going to be the blood transfusion we got from the comic book history, but there's going to be some reason why his blood gets into hers and creates the She-Hulk character.
His blood comes into. Yeah, I think it's interesting. that's a great way of doing it, quick and easy.
Yeah,
right?
I think it'll be pretty cool. And we do see a number of scenes, which are probably the best of the trailer that we've
seen. Training
montage.
Oh
my God, with Bruce and Jennifer on some deserted island where he's trying to teach her what it means to be a Hulk and what the powers are, and she seems to be getting the gist of it pretty quickly. Gist of
it better than him. I think she's a better Hulk than he.
And he's
it took him
off.
years. Well, yeah. I think he's a little upset about it. It took him years to kind of master it, and she gets it immediately. So
she's picking it up very quickly.
Yeah.
And then from what we understand in the trailers, again, ultimately people find out that she is the She-Hulk, and it seems like she has to turn into the She-Hulk at some point in time in court to kind of protect people in court. It looks like Titania may come into court. She has to turn into She-Hulk and defend everybody there. People find out who she is, and they say, look, we've got all these superhumans superpowered individuals that need representation. We'd love you, Jennifer, to lead this new practice at the law firm to represent these individuals as the She-Hulk.
Right.
So
to be the face of superhuman law, the She-Hulk, with this company that she's working for.
This law firm, right?
Law firm, that deals with superhuman entities.
And we know she's asked to represent Emil Blonsky, the Abomination, and she's talking to her boss and says, look, I've got a conflict of interest. This guy tried to kill my cousin.
Yeah.
And this harkens back to the Edward Norton version of the Incredible Hulk movie where the Abomination tried to kill the Hulk,
right?
And she's like, "Look, this guy tried to kill my brother. It's like my cousin, and then like I can't represent him." And the law firm's like, "Oh, too bad. You got to take it on the."
Emil Blonsky, at one point, she comes in and he says Namaste. Apparently, he's some kind of cult leader. Like you can see up in the window, all these women standing there, his worshipers. That he's got some kind of wellness clinic that he runs via his cage, his containment center. He runs some kind of wellness, like this mind, body, spirit kind of thing that she ends up going to. And there's other superhumans there that have rage issues that they're trying to deal with that he is now controlling. It's going to be slapstick for sure. It's going to be funny, but yeah, it's going to be fun. That he is some kind of like life coach for people that have anger issues, which is hilarious.
So we know that the cameos we absolutely know about are Wong, Daredevil, Emil Blonsky, Abomination. They're all going to be in the series to some extent. We know the Wrecking Crew, which is a very classic Marvel Comics, we'll say villainous group, show up in the trailers at one point in time. She has to fight them off. We know they're going to be in it. Charlie Cox's Daredevil is going to be in it. But from what we've been told, what is it, a 9-episode series? I think
9.
It is. Yeah.
30-minute, 9 episodes.
And from what we've been told, there's a lot of cameos that we might be surprised about. And again, we've talked about rumors of potentially
Jessica Jones
showing up. We've talked about rumors of potentially the Thing, showing up potentially. There's lots of things that could happen here. I would not be surprised at all. I think this series, to be honest with you, Titanium, I'm really excited about this series.
I wasn't at first, but now I'm starting to get, especially that last, second trailer.
No way it can be.
It's going to be fun.
Ms. Marvel.
Nothing.
No way it can be worse than Ms. Marvel.
God bless her. She's such a cute little actress.
Oh, stop
and did a great job. But honestly, that show really. Yeah, I mean,
but I'm looking forward to this. The recent trailers have really got me excited about it.
It's gonna now. People don't think you're gonna get some like old school, the Incredible Hulk show. Bruce Banner, goes through this serious. This isn't serious. This is going to be fun.
Right?
It's a comedy. It's an Ally McBeal law courtroom drama kind of comedy. So that's what this show is. A lot of fourth wall breaking. She talks to you. It's just the way that they've designed the show.
I think you and I are going to have a lot of fun covering this one.
I can't wait to see the cameos, yeah.
I think you and I are going to have a lot of fun with this one. And again, this is going to take us, for the most part, it's coming out mid-August. It's going to end in the October time frame, which is going to be kind of like right before we get to kind of the Black Panther Wakanda Forever time frame.
Yeah.
it's going to give us 9 weeks of entertainment.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be really good.
Me too.
I'm excited.
And
for
we'll
it.
get D23 in there at the end of it too. So
we'll get some good stuff. So.
Excellent, Professor. Great show. The bell has rung. School is over.
All right. Well, that's it for us this week. We'll be back next week for more Super Talk. To get in touch with us on social media, hit us up via email, supertalkpodcast@outlook.com or @supertalkpod on Twitter. Until then, stay super, everyone.
And we out.
Thanks, YouTube. Really appreciate your support.
Quantumania and Guardians.